Buongiorno Mondo, and welcome back to 15 with Fosca, the podcast, and to the second part of my conversation with Miriam Hurley, certified translator and fellow U.S. expat in Italy. Last week, Miriam and I spoke about her path to Italy, why she came and stayed, and the challenges and rewards of her life in translation. In this episode, we focus on the important work she does as a community builder and leader, creating occasions and connections for temporary and permanent residents, locals and foreigners alike, in a sincere, welcoming, and very heartfelt way. If you're enjoying the podcast, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Grazie mille e buon ascolto. So I want to leave translating just for a second because you are an amazing member of the Florentine community. And I have to say, I have been so impressed with the amount of things that you do to build community here. And I don't know how you find the time to do it.
Neither do I.
Right? But I would really like for you to talk about Speakeasy Multilingual, and also about all of the other amazing things that you do here in Florence to help expats, visitors, students, and locals alike. You help a lot of people find communities. So tell me more about that, Miriam.
So I'll tell you the history of it that was actually related to the story of all of my comings and goings over the years, and that every expat I know here can relate to. That you come, like I came back and forth, and I would often have no friends. Right?
Yeah.
So like 1998, I literally knew nobody in the whole city except for the bartender, the place I used to get a cappuccino.
Yeah.
And so I had to, rebuild that, and then I left and came back, and then other people, disadvantage of being an expat, or disadvantage of Florence and the international community is that people leave. So
It's true. Yeah, people come and go.
Right, they're here for the UI for 3 years. They get a better job in their country. Right. They fall in love with blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
And so it's a problem. It can help. I joke somewhat that you should make friends with, in addition to Italians, people who are from countries that have a worse economy than Italy, because they won't, even if they'd like to go back to their country.
Chances are
connections through my daughter's father is from Burkina Faso, so very connected to the African community. And everyone would like to go back, but they're less likely to because they're not going to get a better job.
Right.
And so in, I guess, 2015 or something, I became friends with Lexie, who's also an American neighborhood who teaches English. And she was saying, we were talking about this phenomenon, and then about how Italians, if once you're here, in the meantime, I had developed, community for myself and had enough friends at that moment. But we were thinking about what a common problem this is for people if they're here very short term or very long term, to be integrated and part of a specific sort of international community, as opposed to including for Italians who want a more international community. And then she was saying how everyone with her lessons always wanted to have it at the happy hour time, of aperitivo time. And we're originally it started actually Speakeasy English instead of multilingual, and it was kind of like a conversation lesson in a
sort of informal setting.
Right. But then that didn't really work because people at different levels, and we wanted to involve native speakers and people who already spoke English well. And so it developed into basically a social event, not as much language involved. And we've done it now, since then, so 8 years. It's obviously not for COVID, and it's been, super successful. We do it every Wednesday. The participation ranges from 15 people to the most we've ever had is probably 90 during the summer.
That's
we
amazing.
have summer places.
Wow.
And who's usually, people from 10 different countries. About half of them are Italians. They tend to be Italians who lived abroad and came back and wanted to stay in touch with both the languages and a community that's more internationally minded. And then we started actually right at the beginning of COVID, and then had to not do it. right afterwards, art crawls once a month on Saturdays, where we go.
Which you're doing actually
Which we're
this
doing
Saturday.
where we go to different galleries or artist studios and drink wine. It's more of a social event, but, connected to art, which are very popular. And then through this is actually with COVID. This is something I actually want to develop more, hopefully also with you.
Okay.
Because on our site that I developed during lockdown when I had more time, because there's a decline in translation work for a while, and it rebounded, where all the questions that people have who are either new to Florence, not necessarily only foreigners, but especially foreigners, so the site's in English, of course, that sort of collects all the answers to all of these questions that they have, from super basic ones like where do I bring my used clothes,
Right.
to navigating the bureaucracy, to paying taxes, to making friends, and other ways other than Speakeasy, which I really suggest that worked for me, is doing an activity that people that are sort of like-minded might do. So for me, I did African dance and made a lot of friends through that, and my daughter's father, so that changed my life for sure. And the type of people, like Italians wouldn't typically take dance classes, and the type of people who did had more in common with me, and so we'd have that. So now I take karate with my teacher who I met through Speakeasy.
See? Connection.
Actually, all of us are sort of connected to Speakeasy, who do, not everyone, but most of us. And so we do that twice a week. I do it, tonight. And I think for everyone, depending on what their interests are and personality, it can be that's the best way to build community, because everyone's looking for it. It's one of those ironies of modern life that people feel disconnected and lonely, but we all have the same needs.
Absolutely.
And can be, so like for Speakeasy, there's some people who come all the time and they've become friends with each other, and it's like a place for them to hang out.
Yeah.
And then there's some people who are tourists who
just
there
kind of
that
stop
night.
by just that night.
Right,
And I have to say there are a couple of things I wanted to say about you, because I really do think what you're doing is incredible. And I think a lot of people are finding a place, and whether that be, for the 3 months they're here, or for, the 3 years they're here, or forever, they're finding that there is this community, right? And something I appreciated it from day one is how inclusive it is. And I loved the fact that when I came, it was really exactly what you had sold it as, and I'm doing sort of air quotes here, because there were Italians, there were people from all over the world, there were several languages being spoken, and it just felt like a place where you could really just kind of be who you are. And I loved that. Another thing I want to comment on is just how much you help. Like online, somebody will throw out a question, and it can be exactly what you were saying, a very basic question like, where do I go buy goat milk? Or, to, something more serious like, I want to apply to a master's program, I don't know where to start. And you always chime in. You always, and something I love about you is that you always welcome people, and you encourage them to look at the site, to make those connections, to participate in Speakeasy. And I find that you are doing something in a moment where people need community more than ever. You are really doing a great job of bringing people together. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Well, thank you. Speaking of, I would like to have I was with Julia, that's like how I knew Julia, our friend in common, that we were looking for a physical space to realize part of this aspect. And so I'm still looking for, and that would basically be a shared office, but also somewhere where people, if they needed consulting on these things, could come and have like a consulting session, not with me, but with somebody else like you, depending, or like my karate teacher also does taxes for expats. because he's a
Interesting.
CPA, and so
Oh.
it was like they could come and meet with him and ask him their questions.
It's actually a brilliant idea. So what you do is you bring together people who can offer various types of services.
Or in addition, I was thinking too, like once I did a random job that I wouldn't normally do, because people often call me from, Google and don't understand what a translator is, basically.
How is that even possible?
And so they're like,
Come
oh,
on.
can you, I need to talk to the taxi driver who's driving my son.
Oh, they think you're like a spontaneous interpreter.
Or once she was looking for like basically a bilingual personal assistant because she had a problem that she didn't know Italian and needed help. And I randomly did it for her just
But you can
for
also,
fun. But I was like, want to have like a center,
Right.
like an office where there'd be somebody who would
Right.
do that. And you could come in and be like, can you come with me to the
exactly to
the
whatever,
immigration,
so I
to the
can-
post
right,
office?
right,
Can you help me
right.
get these stupid codes that I need for this?
Exactly.
And answer how I open a bank account and all that.
Right. So in addition to creating community, which is something that I applaud, you're also helping people with these practical things. Because I noticed, for example, you were talking about, the Speakeasy website. It has this nice list of services. You can see that people often ask more or less the same kind of questions. And so I guess something I'm curious about, because you, like me, are a long-term resident. How has Florence changed for better and for worse since you first got here? Now it's been, we can say,
Right,
I think
so-
you already said it's been,
Yeah, if it's since I was first here was 1994.
but
so-
like since
so-
you finally moved here.
Right, but I still have that perspective because I was here for a year in
Right.
1994. So that's a lot like
It's-
30 years ago, which is scary.
Right. I didn't want to say it, so I'm glad you said it. But how has Florence changed?
So some ways compared to some places I've lived, like Portland or New York, it's changed less in the center, especially because the buildings are always going to be those buildings. They're not
Right.
going to tear down the Duomo to make something else.
Thank God.
On the positive side, like when I was here in 1994, there's very, very few immigrants in general. So there was, only Chinese immigrants in Prato. Not only, but almost. Like
Yeah.
it was very, and that adds a lot, obviously. And the speaking of questions that all foreigners ask, all Americans for sure ask, is like, Italian food's great, but every single day, like, can I get some good Thai food? And so we,
Now,
like, trade.
compared to when we
right.
first came here, it
Nothing.
was a nightmare.
Exactly.
It was, you couldn't get
Zero.
anything but Chinese,
Right.
which is
And
fine.
bad Chinese
Bad
food.
Tex-Mex,
Right.
which
Super bad Tex-Mex.
is still a
Sorry,
problem.
Tijuana.
It's still a problem. If anyone's
Yeah.
out there listening and wants to, open what I think could be a very fruitful business, Tex-Mex here.
Actually, Lexie, my partner with Speakeasy, is the best Mexican chef I know.
Oh, well then maybe we should
but
talk to her about it. But
Right.
years ago there was nothing.
I know, 0, 0. So people don't even appreciate how bad it was.
No idea. And
Right.
now I think Florence is one of the most interesting cities now in terms of ethnic markets, ethnic restaurants, the offerings you have because of the boom in immigration,
Right.
because of, just the way the society has evolved.
That's why there isn't good Mexican food, because Mexico's too far away and
Yeah.
there aren't enough Mexican immigrants. Not that people have to be from the country to do it.
No,
But it helps.
But it helps, yeah.
To have
It helps
that
for
cultural
sure.
knowledge you're bringing. So it was a plus. On a minus, it's even more crowded with tourism than it was before. Like obviously, it's always been a place. Yeah, I live like you in the Oltrarno, where it's way less intense.
Thank
But when I
goodness.
go, last couple of days, I've gone through the center at peak times to do a practical errand, and it's
Takes twice as much time.
terrible. And obviously, we all experienced during COVID that it was a mixed, as a positive and negative, because it was kind of amazing walking around with nobody in town, but then all of the businesses that rely on it were decimated. In Santa Croce area is where my school was, and there it was when I went there, it was 100% not like it is today, where the excessive of drunk compatriots.
Yes.
So it's like
That is
every
a very-
business is selling just like alcohol to Americans.
That whole street, it always it's like being in College Town, USA.
Right.
I lived in that neighborhood for years, for many, many years, and Stanford was just across the bridge. And so literally walked on that street, I don't know how many times, you know, and I always say to myself, it's just like being back in the U.S. Sometimes it's a little weird.
Whereas our part of town isn't like that.
Not at all. It's a little, it's more quiet, it's more real. I think people, you know, people make it, I always say people make it as far as like Palazzo Pitti, and then that's it,
Right.
more or less, Santo Spirito, things like that. So you can really find an oasis.
Right.
Are there ways that you think the city has, I don't know, has changed in a way that maybe surprised you?
I don't know, so I can't remember like what my expectations were back then.
Or even if you think about like when you were here as a student,
Yeah.
I remember my life being like 99.9% in Italian.
Yeah, that's true that it has like, so mine wasn't because I was in an American bubble, which is part of why I wanted to come back. Because, you know, we, like many of the schools, I had a host family at the beginning, but I wasn't fully immersed. But at the time, people generally spoke a lot less English than they do now, for sure. Obviously, it's the internet generation, and the Erasmus was what really changed it. But but when I came back in '98 and I had no American friends, then it was fully in Italian, and people didn't. Now people are much more, like especially people by nature who come to Speakeasy. So I have this impression when my sister visited me in 2009. And I just given birth, right?
Right.
And so I wasn't going around with her because I just given birth. And I just thought that everyone would speak English. I'd never tried, going to a pharmacy and speaking in English. And she said absolutely not. She had to do gestures and resort to everything.
But I don't think it's like that anymore. Something I noticed, because you were talking about sort of the rise of, thankfully, there's been a boom in immigration, so that's brought with it a lot of interesting developments, let's say. But something that really surprised me is I went for a drink, a few months back with somebody, and I won't say where we went, but the server didn't speak Italian.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's so crazy, right? It's mind-blowing, but it's not, right? I mean, because it happens, but I thought, oh my gosh, the Italian who's with me, who doesn't speak English, I mean, he'll get what he needs, I mean, you get wine, cocktails, things like that, thank goodness, are international. But I don't know that would have happened when I was a student here, even a few years ago.
Labor market-wise, because, in the States, definitely in my city, there's a huge labor shortage for servers especially. So they're doing anything. People always say, oh, well, you have that in Florence. I'm like, well, obviously in Italy before, there's generally a shortage of jobs compared to America, where it's people change jobs a lot.
There's much more movement in the American labor market.
There's some restaurants here, family owned, of course. I went to Sabatino, and I literally went there in 1994, and the guy has aged really well. Exact same guy.
See, that kind of thing, though, you can find in Florence.
Never happens in America.
Well, yeah, but here, just FYI, to our listeners, there's a major crisis in the hospitality industry and the restaurant industry.
I was going to say that's the one thing that
there are lots of jobs
available.
Lots
anyone.
Of jobs. Yeah,
so therefore, before speaking Italian would be a major requirement.
Exactly.
And now they're like, you want to work? Fine.
And this is it's interesting the way that everything is changing and moving so swiftly, right? So we are coming to the end of our conversation, and since you do so many things, I have a feeling that maybe you have something. Is there a new project that you're contemplating, something that you're looking forward to, something that you're particularly excited about that you'd like to share with our listeners, Miriam?
Well, what I referenced before, that I'm still looking for the right physical space to do it in, to really, really increase the level of, you're saying that, I give all this advice and do all these things. It's I want it to be much less me necessarily doing it.
You want it streamlined.
I want to collaborate. So I want to have a space that people could come in and, use for a video conference or have like a workshop in it and sort of bring together all these parts of the international community and the Italian community that's interested in these things. So I've been, again, looking for a place. It'd probably be like a shared place that would have a physical aspect where we might do some speakeasy events, because sometimes we do smaller ones that are based on, it could be like a actual dinner, or we've done like cooking classes or things like that, or the art workshops in English.
Okay.
So with the difficulty of the time restraints and energy restraints, and you're going to America in the summer and having a teenager. The collaborative.
Yes,
I know you know what I'm talking about.
You don't need to say anything else. You and I bonded immediately over that.
But I would like the idea. Like, I'm tired of working at home. I've worked at home forever. I sometimes go to co-working spaces. I have an assistant who's helping me with marketing and going to post office and things.
Exactly,
like that.
doing all that stuff.
Right.
So you have this dream, I think, which is, which would really be a fantastic, I think it's a great idea. I hope you find the right space, and I'll think about it.
It's hard in Florence.
I know.
We tried so hard, and it's everything is,
I know.
It's worse than online dating as far as you get all of the...
I don't know about that.
Because the offers online aren't as good as maybe what somebody's giving their cousin the nice place. Whereas if you're a foreigner, you're less likely for housing too. Where you're like, how'd you get this great apartment? Oh, my cousin's dad's blah blah blah. And you're a foreigner and you just have to look online or the agencies, and you don't get as good offers.
But listen, let's keep talking about it, because who knows? Sometimes things come up, and things might
find it.
Cross my path, and at least our listeners, hopefully.
Word of mouth is...
you're out there, you're listening. Let's find a nice collaborative space where we can
in the Oltrarno or
ideally.
Close in, like near the station, like Via Palazzuolo, and that would be it.
Okay, just so we can have a place where we can all convene, offer our services, do some creative stuff together. I love that. You're already doing it, Miriam. You're doing it virtually. I think everything you do is about communication and community. And so I really want to thank you not only for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me.
It's just been great. And, for the work that you do as a translator, I really value your work. I seriously do. As someone who lives between two languages and two cultures, I value someone like you, because it is really not an easy job at all. Right. But I also value you because I think what you're doing for the community is exceptional. And I just think that your commitment to that is very sincere and very heartfelt, and you're very good at it.
Thank you.
So I hope that you'll come back on the podcast once you do have the space, because I'm very positive about this. I think it's going to happen, and we can talk about all the exciting things that you'll be doing there.
Great.
All right. Grazie mille.
Grazie a te.
E alla prossima volta. Arrivederci.
Arrivederci.
Thank you once again for tuning in to this week's episode of 15 with Fosca, and for continuing to do so. Grazie mille e alla prossima volta.